Let's have a blessed day. How do you do? I know it's your heart.
Good morning.
It's good to see you, you, and what do you say, let's have a nice day.
Good morning. Thank you, Amy and Barry, so much. I'm Jacqueline Williams, and I'll be leading you through the service today. But before we get started, you'll notice you probably got this as you came in with your bulletin, and these are versions of the Lord's Prayer. As a part of the visioning session, one of the recommendations was changing it up. So today we'll do our standard Lord's Prayer, and we'll do the one that's in your bulletin, okay? And also like to welcome Rob Preece as our guest speaker. He's a UHH Associate Professor of Space and Science. He's been privileged to observe the sky at its most energetic, working with 2 NASA gamma ray astronomy missions over a 25-year career. The Firma Gamma Ray Burst Monitor just celebrated its 10th year in orbit with a bang. The first joint gamma ray and gravitational wave observance of 2 colliding neutron stars. So, hey, we got brilliance in the audience today that will be leading us. Okay, so if you would please say our opening statement with me. There is only one presence and one power in my life and the universe, God. Now, I've taken the liberty of lighting the Christ candle, and that light represents the Christ in each and every one of us. Sometimes it's difficult to see. You know, my challenge always to you is to look for the Christ light. And if you remember, a while back we used to say count to 10 before you say anything, pause before you get upset. What I'd say to you is pause for 1 second and see the light, and all is well. Now, if you would, our mission and vision statement. Centered God, we inspire spiritual transformation, creating a world of love, peace, and prosperity. We are an inclusive spiritual community, inspiring, awakening, and serving in love. And now for our children's blessing. For all the little children that I see out there this morning. It's not an age, it's in your heart. And for all the children around the world, we say, we love you, we bless you, and we behold Christ in you. We accept you just the way you are. Walk in beauty, you are divine.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and stand and sing another song. I remember this time. We're going to stand and sing actually number 322. In your song, I want to change it up a little bit. The old one's in there is I am free. We're going to do I am free, you are free, we are free. So it's just 4 times. I am free, I am unlimited. There are no chains that bind me. I am free, I am unlimited. Right now, right now. I am free, I am unlimited. There are no chains that
We learned the last time or two.
Got it down.
We hold the prayer box back there in the back most of the week, most of the time even on Sunday. It's there for us to put any prayer requests that we have in as we pray over them at the moment. Holding them in the awareness of Spirit. Then they are sent to unity, silent unity, to be prayed over again. Right now, we pray that all these prayers be held in the wholeness of the one. Amen.
And now for our daily word. Today's daily word is authenticity. I am free to be my true self. Today I may be called to fill many roles: parent, child, spouse, partner, friend, neighbor, co-worker, consumer, citizen. As I contemplate the unwavering power of infinite love, I understand that my true self, my authentic self, is divine. I am guided to speak and act for the highest good of all concerned. I can express myself with courage and compassion. In strife, my words and actions bring forth peace, reconciliation, and wholeness. In accord, my contribution is a magnet for joy, beauty, and abundance. Trusting my authentic self, I allow the glory of the infinite to transform ordinary circumstances into magnificent possibilities. And the scripture from 2 Corinthians. And all of us with unveiled faces, seeing the glory of the Lord as though reflected in a mirror, are being transformed. Remember we're doing two. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Divine source, present within us, in whom we live and move and have our being. The experience of sacred presence is our highest priority. May we allow our human ego consciousness to be guided by the Christ consciousness, so that both continuously work in harmony, each performing tasks that best suits it. We claim our ever-present connection to divine substance, so that our needs are bountifully fulfilled in each moment. And may we forgive ourselves, even as we forgive those we encounter. We rely on loving grace to help us guard our hearts from error thinking, and lead us back to the inner stillness and peace. For there is no situation, no time, and no place where we are without the one presence.
As we remember those words of the Lord's Prayer, let us just take a deep breath, pausing for a moment to approach that silent inner stillness. Breathing deeply in, feel that love that connects us all. And as we release, let us relax into this moment in gratitude. Breathing in again and out. Relaxing into this moment. Secure that all is in divine order and we are exactly where we are meant to be in this moment. Feel that music as it touches your ear. Feel that air on your skin, your seat firmly in the chair, and your feet firmly on the floor. And now with me, let us just picture in our mind's eye a light, a cloud of light surrounding our bodies in a cushion of security and comfort. This is the divine light, that rejuvenating life force. Allow it now to begin to move through your body, touching each cell with the rejuvenating life force of divinity, that divine light that renews and makes whole. And as it passes through, just allow it to move beyond the boundary of your body, encompassing the whole of you and growing ever larger, encompassing your neighbor, and continuously it grows until it is as large as this church, and yet it continues to expand. This divine light is now bigger than the church. It reaches out to the highway in front of the church. Every driver that passes by will feel this light. And yet it continues to expand, like the waves from a pebble on a still lake, expanding ever wider, encompassing our whole community, Huntsville, Madison, and even broader, all of North Alabama in this state, touching each person, each being with that light, lifting them up, lifting us all up together as one. Feeling that comfort of oneness, the love that binds us together, the gratitude. We move closer to that stillness and we rest there in the silence. From that peaceful stillness, we just allow this moment we share together. We ask a blessing upon everyone here, and all of those you know and all those you don't know. May Spirit touch our heart and help us to remember there is no place we can go and no time we can be without that Christ within it. Gratitude for this ever-present being, this ever-present comfort. We say thank you, and so it is. Amen. Please won't you join me in welcoming our guest speaker today? Rob, please.
Well, when it comes to choices and making choices, the whole of my talk is sort of summarized by that statement by that great American philosopher Yogi Berra. When you come to a fork in the road, take it. And he was literally talking true, because he was describing how to get to his house. And his driveway went 2 ways. But they ended up in the same place. So we have free will to make choices, but it is rooted in the overarching presence of God and unity of God. So if you take anything from this sermon, take the fork in the road. So, choices and free will. So, I went to the source of all knowledge, Wikipedia, and found this statement. Free will is the ability to choose between different possible courses of action unimpeded. Very nice, very succinct. A little history would be appropriate for this discussion of free will. Democritus, working about 460 years before Christ, is the father of determinism. And by determinism, I mean that all things are determined by laws of nature or whatever. He thought of all things, including people, as being like made of atoms in a void. And the atom's motion or life course or what you might think of as your way of life is governed by laws. You think of this as a billiard table filled with balls, billiard balls. And you make the stroke in the cue ball, and if you make it precisely correct, the course of the balls on the table are exactly determined by physical law. And a good billiards player can reproduce a trick shot almost exactly precisely with practice. That's the idea behind determinism. Everything is governed by a law, by strict laws of physics. Then along came, around 300 BC, Epicurus. This is about 40 years after Aristotle. So he thought that the occasion may arise when these atoms, which are bound to their lawful courses, might sometimes swerve. That's a pretty good description of our lives, if you think about it. So there's a little bit of freedom in the actions of these atoms. He said, some things happen by necessity, others by chance, and others through our own agency. So setting up the dichotomy of determinism and free will, free action. Well, this persisted through the ages, and it was now time to bring in science to the discussion. of the free will problem. Do we have free will or not? Turn to Isaac Newton first, around 1700. He derived the universal laws of nature, and he described them as universal. Universal gravitation. I drop an apple on the earth. It's the same law that when you drop a moon around the earth, it stays going around the earth. When you drop the earth going around the sun, it stays going around the sun. Universal laws that you can rely on and calculate and predetermine the courses of all bodies. This inspired the deists in the Enlightenment. The deists believed that God is the first cause of the universe. So they believed in God. Then they believed that God walked away because he set the universe in motion like a clockwork. God. So all things ticked forward according to the laws that God set down. But the laws of God were indication of his perfection. So the idea was for the deists that you could observe the universe and prove the existence of God. Isaac Newton took that deeply to heart. He wanted to find the equations that predicted God. He was a mystic. I don't know if you've heard this story, and an optimist. So he wanted to prove God through science. He never did. On the theological side, the question got taken up after the Reformation, and John Calvin, working around 1550, came up with the idea of predestination. So that's the idea that all things are willed by God, especially the fate of the soul, and gave rise to the paradox of free will. Because if God orders all things, including whether or not I go to heaven or hell, then do I have free will? The idea of God being an omniscient being is somewhat in conflict with the idea of free will. Because if he's omniscient, he knows what we're going to do next. If God knows what we're going to do next, how do we have free will? We naturally do what God knew he would do. And this is summarized up in the text, Romans 8:28 through 30. We know that in everything God works for good with those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. And those whom he predestined, he also called, and those whom he called, he also justified, and those whom he justified, he also glorified. Pretty much a done deal. He called us, he justified us, he glorified us. If we're the ones who are destined to be the first fruit of the Spirit. But how can you tell who is destined to be the first one of the Spirit? Maybe there's somebody who's destined to live in sin all their entire life, and then at the last minute chooses God. How would you know that that person is predestined for goodness? The evidence is not there. Actually, only God knows. And it's God who loves us. But this Romans passage is you've got to be careful with it. It's very nuanced. And I'd like to draw your attention to the first phrase. We know that in everything, God works for good with those who love him. doesn't say much about those who don't love him. So love has to be present in there for this predestination to work. It's only the narrowest interpretation that says God predestines only a few, select few for salvation, all others for damnation. So this idea that we're wired, people took it up. Predestination was a philosophical tradition of the early church. This really resonates with the fixed laws of nature that Isaac Newton presented to the world. Laws of nature, laws of spirit, theological determinism, and natural determinism. So where in science can we look for free will? It seems it's hopeless. Well, we can turn to quantum mechanics. And when I say that phrase, I know at least half of you are going, oh no. It's one of the most famous calculators or scientists working in the realm of quantum mechanics was Richard Feynman. And he said, if you say that you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics. It is a very frightfully confusing subject. And I'm not going to try to explain it here because that would mean that I understood it. Which I don't. But let me draw your attention to just a few short facts, short ideas. Consider the simplest object in science, the electron. One of the simplest objects. It's a point particle that has electric charge, 1 unit of electric charge. It also has a property called spin. You can think of it as spinning it like a top. But as with all things, quantum mechanics, it's not. But you can think of it that way. And like all things quantum mechanically, it has two states. It's quantized. So with respect to a magnetic field, the electron is spin up or spin down. That's all we got. The whole electron. That's its only property. Spin up, spin down. So you can prepare an electron, the electron beam of electrons, and determine whether each electron is spin up or spin down by passing the beam of electrons through a magnetic field. Spin up will go up, spin down will go down. And you can prepare individual electrons in a quantum state of superposition that's half spin up and half spin down. But a funny thing happens on its way through the measuring device. It chooses spin up or spin down. Now, I don't want you to be misled. I'm actually saying that it chooses. And when it chooses, its choice is permanent. So if it's determined to be spin up, it is always spin up. And if you measure it again, it's spin up, spin up, spin up. But suppose you wanted to know if there's spin left or spin right. Because if you change the magnetic field orientation, the electron could be spin left or spin right. It has two states after all. So even though the electron has chosen spin up, let's say, and you try to check to see if it's spin left or spin right, it is 50-50 spin left or spin right. And it chooses one of them. Okay, now it made two choices, right? So you would think that if you looked back and checked again, spin up or spin down, it'd be spin up. But no, spin up and spin down and spin left and spin right are incompatible quantum states. So once you measure it in one state, it's always in that state. So it is no longer spin up when you measure it spin left or spin right. It's forgotten. So you can make choices after choices after choices. The odd thing is, you can correlate two electrons, or electron and positron. Simply shine light bright enough, actually 1 million electron volts light, and it will split into electron-positron pair that are correlated. By correlated, I mean if you measure one spin up, the other will be spin down. Always. But when they're emitted, the electron and positron are in the state 50-50. So the question is, how does the electron, when you measure it, spin up, tell the positron to be spin down? They're created correlated, but they're in an indeterminate state. You measure one, the other one instantly changes to its other state. Now, this experiment has been done over huge distances. It's done with light particles, photons, but it's the same experiment, spin up, spin down. And so as far as we know, there is no signal that propagates from the particle that's measured to the particle that's not measured. And yet, whenever they make the experiment, it's called delayed choice. Nice name, I like it. Make the experiment, there's no chance that light could travel from one to the other, to pass information from one to the other. Somehow, they know that the choice has been made, both of them. This can happen on universal cosmological distances. It's like the whole universe knows that the choice has been made. Remember, this is just one choice. So, quantum theorists have had a field day with this to describe this non-local phenomenon. And the one idea that is really caught on is called many worlds. So you have two correlated states before the measurement and one after. So what happened to the other one? Well, in the many worlds philosophy, the other one created another universe. Or you could say that the universe split into two. One spin up, one spin down. Now, you may think this is just academic, but if I make a choice, neurons are firing in my brain. Chemical changes are taking place. Chemical changes, which are molecular, which are electronic changes, which are changes in the states of electrons in orbiting atoms in the molecules of my body. I'm making trillions of choices just by making one conscious decision choice. So under the many worlds theory, whenever I make a choice, trillions of worlds are formed. Trillions, quadrillions, innumerable. That seems like a lot of waste, just for me to make one decision. I don't know about you, but I prefer one universe rather than a multiplicity of universes. And this goes really ad absurdum, because for every universe where I made the right choices in life, there are innumerable universes where I made the wrong choices in life. I don't like that, because that reflects bad on me. bad choice. And not only that, but our whole universe is where I made the bad choice. Trillions of them. And they're never going to change. The choice has been made. That's a terrible philosophy, if you ask me. And not only that, each of these universes is static, it doesn't change. So this does not look like the answer to free will, because if all the choices are recorded in the universe, then I've made all the choices, not a choice. So, the best answer for this, against this many worlds interpretation, is that we have free will, we make a choice. And that choice is spread throughout the universe, instantly. All the trillions of choices in the electronic states in my neurons have changed the universe. The universe is constantly being changed by our choices. The only entity that can coordinate all this change is God. So what does the scripture say about change? Deuteronomy 30:19. Today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessing and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you have made. Heaven and earth, the entire universe. Oh, that you would choose life so that you and your descendants might live. So choice is a gift from God to the people of God. And we know that this gift is given in love, because God is love. Love is also a non-local phenomenon. Whenever two or more are in the presence, together they're in the presence of God. So, the fact that God is love gives us this choice, freedom to choose. And the best way I know of expressing that was in the scripture, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have made for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. So in my mind, the conflict between free will and determinism is broken by the love of God. And I know that when I have a choice, I should take it. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Rob.
We're going to go ahead and stand. Thank you, Rob. We're going to stand and sing another song. We're going to name it and claim it, and we're going to make those choices every day. Thank you.